name's Elaine Schwartz, and I'm Director of Guidance. Welcome to our Junior Parent Night. And I'd like to say that if you have survived this cold weather and the polar vortex, college process with your children will be nothing after that. I want to thank Jim Honeycutt, who is up in the balcony there filming, and he will have this on both cable channel 78 and on YouTube. He's hoping by the end of next week. So if you know anyone that's missed tonight and wants to see it, they'll be able to. Also want to thank, we have one of our students out there, Amanda, who is giving out our materials, and she will also be speaking a little bit later about what she's learned from the college process. Soon you'll also be meeting our very hardworking and caring counselors who will introduce themselves to you when they come up here and do their presentation. Just for curiosity, how many of you are going through this college process for the very first time? It's a good number. And how many of you have been through this already? Okay. So whether you've been through this or not, what all of us want most for your children is that they find the right fit, the place that is right for them so that they can stay happy and healthy. That's what you want for them, and it's what we want for them as well. We are going to take you through this post-high school planning process step by step, but please remember that each child will go through this process in his or her own pace. And that's fine. Everyone gets through it. Some may be a little ahead at times, and some may be a little behind, but don't worry about what others are doing, and please don't listen to what others are saying around you. You do what is right for your child. And remember to keep your child's information confidential. No one needs to know what their SAT score was, what their ACT score was, or what their GPA is. If your child is asked, it's perfectly okay for them to say, I did fine on my SATs, I'm doing fine in school. That's all they need to say. I'd like to just review the sequence of events so far. In October, many of your children took the PSAT and they received their scores back in December. In December, also, your children were trained to use the Naviance program. That was done through our College and Career Center. Also in December, all the counselors went into your children's junior classroom in their English class, where they were given the same information that you are being given this evening. Later tonight, you will hear about also individual family appointments that will begin January 13th. You'll hear about that as well. But for now, let's think a little bit about what your children are thinking about at the moment. Remember that right now, your children are very worried about a lot of things. They're thinking about their grades. They're certainly thinking about their midterms right now. They're thinking about if they apply to college, will they get rejected? And maybe right now, most of all, they're thinking about whether or not they're going to the county's dance that's coming up. But we need to help them relax and enjoy their high school years and their friends and their family. We need to work together to be the calming influence for our children. We need to take care of them. They're still children who need us, even though they're trying to act very grown up. So let's remember that. So tonight, once we conclude our general presentation, you're going to hear from Amanda, the student I mentioned before, to talk about what she went through with the college process. Then you'll be going to classrooms. There'll be room numbers listed for you at the end of this presentation, and that's where you will actually have meeting with your child's counselor. And if you have questions, please jot them down during the presentation, because when you're in the classrooms, that'll be a perfect time to ask them. You've received some materials tonight. Please be sure to read this post-high school planning guide that we've given to you. It's got a lot of really good information. We work really hard every year to update it and make sure that it's correct. And before we begin, let me just leave you with the reassurance that everything really will work out for your children in the end. Trust this process and journey that you and your children are about to take, because going through it will assure you and your child that the right college choice will happen for them. And just remember that we are here for you every step of the way.
Good evening. My name is Christine Tellerico. On the slide behind me, it's many doors there. Tonight we are talking about one of those doors, and that is pretty much the four-year college option. So even though our school statistics do show that 94% of our Staples High School students go immediately on to four-year college, there are many other options, as you can see on the slide behind me, and your son or daughter's counselor would be happy to speak to you, and your child's counselor would be happy to speak with you and your child about those options. Okay, the family meetings that Elaine mentioned when she was up here a moment ago, you may begin calling our guidance secretary now to schedule an appointment for you and your child to meet with his or her counselor to begin the post-high school planning process. Appointments begin Monday, January 13th. All appointments are during the school day and need to be scheduled during your child's free period. And if your son or daughter doesn't have a free period, our secretary is really great at finding out a time that we can do that. And we ask that you come to this meeting prepared. And by prepared, we simply mean familiarize yourself with the post-secondary planning guide beforehand. It contains a wealth of information. Have your child perform a college search in Naviance, which they should have done in their phys ed class back before holiday vacation. Don't worry if the initial list is really large, because many times at the beginning it is. Review your sons and daughters' PSAT scores that were mailed home prior to holiday vacation, and be familiar with your son or daughter's cumulative GPA, which can be found in Naviance or on Home Access Center. Okay, our College and Career Center. Starting back in 9th grade, your sons and daughters were introduced to the College and Career Center. In 9th grade, they all completed a personality type indicator called Do What You Are. And in 10th grade, they completed an interest inventory called the Interest Profiler, along with a resume workshop. This current year, in the month of December, as I said previously, all juniors were instructed in the use of Naviance, which included, but was not limited to, how to perform a college search and how to use the ever-popular scattergram feature. Sometimes your sons and daughters have just a quick question for a counselor. We might have a meeting and they might just need to run in, run out, and answer it. So in response to this need, we created walk-in hours in the College and Career Center for students only. A counselor's on duty during all 3 lunch periods, 4 days a week. And we've been finding and keeping statistics that they really do use this and enjoy the time. So thank you.
Good evening, I'm Jennifer Curry, and I'm going to talk to you about Naviance. So I think Naviance gets known kind of as the college program, but as Christine mentioned, your students have actually been using it since 9th grade with the 2 interest inventories that they have taken. And the great thing about Naviance is that it stores that information. So your students, you, and your student's counselor can go in and look at that information and see what their personality type is like and what career areas might be of interest to them. And that becomes really helpful as we are starting the college planning process and what might be some good choices for them. So we do encourage students and parents to look at that information as well as we go into this process. In terms of the training for parents, we are going to provide an online resource so you have some of the same tips and tools on how to use Naviance, and when that becomes available, we will send that information out so that you can go on and access that information. We do notice that as junior year approaches that parents are a little more interested in using Naviance because of the wealth of information that it has, specifically regarding college. It has lots of information on all the colleges and lots of data, which a lot of the parents are very excited to get to see. In terms of what your students have done in their training program, so they have gone through their PE class to do basically the ins and outs of a college search. And this we find is very helpful because, as you can imagine, there's thousands of colleges out there, and it helps them learn how to sort of start whittling down to a manageable list of schools. And some of the ways that they do that is looking at really broad categories. So geographic location, the size of the school, the campus setting, and obviously the majors that are offered and available to the students. So that helps them get sort of a list that they can work with. For each school in Naviance, there's information about the school as well as a lot of statistical data related to Staples students. So students and parents and counselors are able to see over the last 3 years how Staples students have fared applying to that school. And the easiest way and the best way to sort of look at that is the visual of the scattergram. So this will plot your students against all the other students who've applied in the last 3 years using their GPA, which is their academic or weighted GPA. This is cumulative and is updated at the end of every semester. So at the beginning of February, your students should have an updated one. And standardized test scores. The test scores that are in there right now for the majority of your students are those PSAT scores. As they choose to take additional standardized tests, those will be in there as well, so that information is available. This gives students, parents, counselors an idea of if the student applied to that school, how they might fare in the admissions process. It's not an exact science, it's one of the tools that we use, but it's certainly very helpful to whittle down that manageable list to an application list, and that list is appropriate, balanced, and realistic. So there are target schools, there are likely schools, and there are reach schools within the student's list. So we are probably on Naviance as counselors every single day, and it's a wonderful resource. But as I said, it is only one of the resources that we have available, but certainly something we encourage students and parents to use relatively frequently, but not too much. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Leslie Hammer. I'm going to tell you a little bit about all the various components that go into the college application. As you can see, there are quite a few factors that come into play. Of these, hands down, the most important are the students' grades in all their academic classes for all 4 years and the strength of their curriculum. Grades do matter. Colleges need to know that the students are capable of doing academic work, and it's been shown that high school grades are the best predictor of academic success in college. Some universities will also want to see that the students have appropriately challenged themselves, that they've pushed themselves a little bit to take more rigorous courses as they move forward during their high school career. I stress appropriately because what we really don't want are students who are struggling in classes and they're in over their heads. We want them to have the balance to explore, to challenge themselves a little bit, and still to be kids and enjoy their high school time. After the grades and the strength of the courses, which really are a reflection of your child's high school academic career, most of the rest of the items on this list are really just parts of the application process. Most colleges want to see standardized test scores, so virtually all of our students will take either the SAT, the ACT, or both. The other pieces, the personal statement, the extracurricular activities, the recommendation letters, we'll talk about a little bit more in this presentation later on. I would like to highlight, though, the demonstrated interest. This does make a difference for many schools. A student that's demonstrated interest in a school is considered to be much more likely to actually attend if they've been accepted, and of course that's important for the university to know. So visiting a campus if possible, meeting with the reps when they visit here at Staples in the fall, doing interviews if they're available, these can be really important. Finally, there are some other factors that are pretty much out of the student's control, things like diversity, legacy, their ability to pay, and various institutional priorities, which you may or may not know anything at all about. Sometimes students are looking to have students for specific programs. Maybe it's a new engineering program, maybe they're bassoon players graduating. A few years back, the word was that nobody could get into Boston College unless they were applying for nursing. You just don't know, and it really is out of your control. These priorities will shift from school to school, from year to year, and it's really difficult to try to game the system. Next. This is what our school profile looks like. This is sent to colleges along with your student's transcript. It gives colleges basically a snapshot of the kind of high school that we are. Many colleges already know Staples, but some don't, and this profile provides them with a lot of information that will help them to place Staples in the context of other high schools, and it also gives them a snapshot of this particular class. So while we don't report something like, say, the student's rank in the class, we do have a bar graph that sort of shows the breakdown of how the grades are distributed, so that it can give them a better idea of where the student stands. Next. This is what the transcript looks like. If you haven't seen your son or daughters, you can find it on the Home Access Center. It simply lists courses, levels, grades, and credit. Only the final grades for the class is shown, and there are two different GPAs reflected, which are the academic and the overall. The academic GPA, you may probably already know, reflects the cumulative weighted grade point average for all academic classes only. The overall GPA also includes the physical education, art classes, and other electives, and it's not weighted. Sometimes there's a lot of confusion around the GPA that shows up on the report cards. That is certainly almost always different from what you see on the transcript because it is only the quarter, the overall GPA just for that quarter. So, and finally, a strong senior schedule is vital. We're sitting down with all of our juniors next month to schedule their classes for next year. We work very closely with the students and the teachers to come up with what we hope will be just the right, appropriately challenging fit for them. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is PJ Washanko. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the entrance exams that your students may be required to take. Now, listed above, you'll see the websites for SAT and ACT. Also, the SAT website, you also get access to the subject test, which I'll go into a little bit later. But if your student's applying to college, most likely one of these two exams may be required. With these exams, there's obviously, the PSATs, they went through us to register. They have to go online to do these. Test scores are sent through these websites as well. If your student had taken the PSAT and they got their scores back and they felt it wasn't a good reflection of their potential, they may want to consider the fairtest.org website, which lists every school in the country that is test optional. And that list does grow every year. We do make the students aware of it. Some of the schools that you will find on the list are American University, Bard College, Bowdoin College, and Connecticut College, just to name a few, and there's hundreds on there. So if they feel like, I don't want to take that test again, or the scores weren't a great reflection, have them take a look at this site, have them come see us to look at the site. We can see if there's some options down there that they might be interested in. The differences between the two exams, SAT and ACT, are pretty significant. ACT has the science on there, so that's definitely one of the main differences between the two exams. SAT does not. ACT will penalize students for not answering questions, while SAT will allow them to omit questions so they can skip over ones and not be penalized. The SAT is application of knowledge. ACT is curriculum-based. So if your students do very well on exams here at Staples, ACT may be a better option for them. A lot of these websites, you'll see practice exams on there as well, so you can practice, or your students can practice some of the questions they might see on there. And again, if they feel like they're pretty comfortable with what they're asking, it's a nice option to have. In terms of this past senior class, who is going to be graduating in June, about a third of them took both the exams. So a strategy for some families are take both the exams, see which one you do better on, and then take an additional one of that. About half of the students from the senior class took the ACT, and about 4/5 took the SAT. So there's definitely options out there, and again, if they hate the exams, there's always those test optional schools. Something else you may see, or your students may see, are going to be subject tests from the SAT website. Now, these may be required by, there's a small list of selective schools that may require these exams, and they're 1-hour exams, they're subject specific. The students can take up to 3 in one day. Again, they should know if this is something they need to do. Some students feel like they have to do it, but it may not be necessary. Once they start to look at the colleges, they could see if it is required by the college for admissions. If they want to know if one of these exams is a good idea, it's a nice conversation to have with a teacher or the counselor. They could look at their performance in the class, see how that would equate to possibly an exam. There's different options, as you'll see on the next slide, where there might be a Math 1 and a Math 2, so they're 2 different level type exams. Some of the classes that we do have here will prepare the students for that, but we do encourage them to wait until most of that class is behind them to take this exam. So a lot of students will take the subject test in May and June if they feel like it's required to do, because that way they're preparing for the midterms. They might be preparing for the AP exams. So there's not a whole lot of additional prep they have to do. So if that's something they feel like they need to plan for, it's best to wait till the late spring to do that. And finally, the dates that you'll see. So for SAT and ACT for the rest of this school year, there are a few more options. The January SAT deadline has passed. ACT, not to scare people, is tomorrow. Again, wait, see if when it's appropriate. If your students have a lot on their plate right now, or they feel like they haven't prepared properly for it, don't rush it. There's plenty of time to take them. You have the examinations for the rest of this year. We have about, I think this senior class had about 40% actually take the exam in the fall. So they do it in October and September. So there's no need to rush and get out of the way. If they want to focus on some other things that are more important now, that's fine. Wait till later on. We're going to talk about this more in the breakout sessions, but it's good to space things out and not take on too much too fast, because if they're not at their best, then they're not going to score as well as they can on these exams. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Denise Honeycutt. Good evening, nice to see you all. Just a reminder, when you start filling out forms and registering for SATs, please make sure your son or daughter registers with their full legal name. We've run into a few snags here and there when a student might register as Jack instead of John, if that's his legal name, and then the colleges have a hard time matching up all the information that starts coming in. So please keep that in mind. The college visit is really the fun part, I think, of this whole process. You know, to sit with your son or daughter in a car and drive for hours and hours and hours. Have them take off their headsets and talk to them. You know, it's a great time to bond. You might learn something that you didn't know. You might hear about some of their ideas for their future, but it really is a lot of fun. If possible, visit the schools that your sons and daughters are interested in. It's a great thing to visit during our February break and hopefully our April break, because then if you get to do that, the colleges are in session, and our kids get to see college kids, and they get to feel the vibrancy of the campus, they get an idea of the culture of the school, and it's really such a worthwhile thing. And also, you're demonstrating interest by visiting. We usually recommend starting off perhaps with a school like UConn, because that's a simple day trip you can take, and you'll get to see what a large state school looks like, and then maybe follow that up with a smaller private school like Fairfield University or Connecticut College, just so that your son or daughter gets to compare different kinds of schools. So call ahead or go online and register. You have to do this so they know you're coming, and you get right into their computer data bank so that they will follow your son or daughter, and make those visits because they're really important. Your sons and daughters are allowed 2 excused absences for those visits. So keep that in mind too. This is a college comparison chart. As your son or daughter starts visiting schools, they're going to get a lot of information. So up there we have location, size, price, type of admission, etc. This is a chart just to keep track of all that information, because after a while, everything kind of meshes together. And this can be downloaded from the Staples website, and those items that are across can be changed to meet the criteria that your son or daughter may have. Oh, the interview. Did we have the essay? Oh, okay. The college interview is an ideal time to show a student that the student is more than just, stuff on paper. That your son or daughter is more than an interview, is more than an essay, is more than a score, is more than a transcript. And it's a chance for your son or daughter to kind of demonstrate their personality, or to talk about things that are very relevant to them. Most colleges do not require an interview. However, some schools might require them, and some schools may recommend them. College interviews depend on the school. So that's something when you call ahead to visit a school, you might want to ask, do you interview? Sometimes the interviews take place right on the college campus with admissions people, and sometimes they'll take place locally. Sometimes alumni will meet with students right in the area. We've had kids meet at the library, meet at Starbucks, and they are interviewed. The interview is usually informal. It usually lasts about a half an hour to an hour, and typically when it's over, the representative or the alumni will write something up about your son or daughter and send that over to admissions. So just pay attention to see if that is indeed done. The essay, very important part of the college application. It allows each student a chance to write about something that's very important to them and something that has meaning to them. It allows admissions to learn something about your son or daughter that might not come through, again, with just a transcript or a school profile or whatever else, they're going to be reading about your son or daughter. Essays are important, and so we recommend that students own those essays, that essay happens from that student's heart, from that student's core. It's obvious to us when we read an essay that wasn't written by a student, or when we read an essay that a lot of people might have had a hand in, because when that happens, that student totally loses their voice, and admissions people know that, so keep that in mind. We like to help our kids with their essays. We are happy to do that. Sometimes kids need help getting started. Sometimes they just want someone to read it for content. So please use us in that aspect, okay? Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Victoria Capozzi, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about some special interests in the application process. So for those of you who may have children who are musicians, artists, actors, dancers, singers, and wish to pursue their craft in college, they will most likely need to complete a supplemental application in the process. They'll also need to either audition, create a CD, a DVD, or an electronic file, or present an art portfolio. Now, the kicker here is that each college or university will clearly delineate what the requirements are for their college alone. Oftentimes, it's not the same for every college, and it can be a little confusing at times. However, if you check each college's website and figure out a way to stay organized in this process, it works out fine. Be sure to check each individual school's website. Athletes who wish to play Division I or Division II sports, they must register with the NCAA Eligibility Center to assure that they are academically eligible to play at the university level. Please be assured that our students rarely have any eligibility issues. However, it is important to visit page 26 in the planning guide for specific course details. Athletes who wish to play Division III sports in college need to visit each college's athletic link on its website, and one can usually find a prospective student-athlete questionnaire or form to be completed. This usually facilitates communication between your child and a potential college coach. And lastly for me, if your child is currently in special education or has a 504 plan with accommodations, we ask that you have a personal conversation with your child's counselor, as it is a family decision whether or not to disclose special education information or accommodation information. Documentation requirements and criteria for determining eligibility at the college level may differ from college to college. And unfortunately, accommodations in high school do not automatically transfer to college. I ask that you read page 28 in the planning guide for more detailed information. But most importantly, have an individual conversation with your child's counselor.
Hello, I am Tom Brown. Student description forms. So every year, each of us as counselors are going to write an individual letter for every single one of your students applying to college, the counselor recommendation letter. That letter is written from our knowledge of your students, from the experiences we've had with them over the last few years, and from the information they and you give us through some other forms. The student description form is one of those. It's a really awesome resource that we bring out and that you can give back to us and your students can give back to us. What we're asking is for all the awesome things that your kids do in this community, in the school, elsewhere, that we may not know as much about because we don't spend every second of every day with them. We only see them in school when they choose to come to our offices or when we call them down and they think they're in trouble, but they're really not. So we ask that you bring these out and give them to their coaches, to their bosses, to their supervisors, to religious figures, to anybody who they interact with in the community that has something that they want to put into the process, something they want to contribute to who your student is. And then we take that and we incorporate those into our letters and we use them for insights, sometimes maybe a quote, sometimes a little factoid or some other useful information that brings a lot of extra light and energy to a college recommendation letter coming from the counselors. This is an example of what it looks like. It's hard to see on the screen, but it's in the book, and you can see it there. But pretty simple. It's a short form. An important part of this is to remember this is not the teacher recommendation letter. So if your student has a teacher they really get along with and they want to have them write a recommendation letter, this is not the form to give them. That's a different process. That one comes a little bit later. We encourage students to think about that in the springtime. This they can start right now. They can start handing these out to whoever they want to get input from. The teacher recommendation letter, the bigger one, is written by the teacher and sent directly to the college. No one else sees that except the teacher and the college who wrote it. And the reason why we ask you to wait for that is because sometimes a student might make a bond with a second semester junior year teacher, and that could be the best person to write their recommendation letter. So it's good to be patient and to think about who you want to ask before, or who your student wants to ask before jumping into that too soon. College panel night, like tonight, is another event for you to come and hear some great information. This is an invaluable resource, really, for all of you. What we do is we bring in college admissions professionals who are currently working in colleges and universities around the country. They come here, they form a panel, and they give you information, and they talk to you about the process of college admissions. So we really can't give you any more direct information than the actual people who are reading the recommendation, reading the applications, and who are admitting students to colleges. So these are the people who make the decisions, and they're coming here to talk to you, not about their specific colleges, but about the whole process and all the things that you can do and your students can do to get through it and to be successful in it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bill Plunkett. So there are several different types of application plans that students can follow depending on what is offered by the colleges that they're interested in applying to and what makes sense for them as an individual student. This is mainly a consideration to start keeping in mind as we approach the summer and next fall, as students definitely do not have to have it all figured out when they're juniors, but we want you to at least be familiar with some of the terminology and options that are out there. And these are described in further detail on page 14 of the planning guide that you all received on the way in. So rolling admission is probably the simplest plan. You submit an application at any point. The college reviews the applications as they come in, and they send a decision back. It might take as little as a couple of weeks or up to a couple of months. And while there's no specific deadline attached, it's generally best to submit rolling applications during the fall of senior year. Regular decision follows a set deadline, usually sometime after January 1st, by which all application materials must be submitted. Students can be notified any time after that, but it may not be until the spring. Typically in regular decision, all the applications that a college receives are reviewed in one round as they look to admit an entire class. There's no binding commitment attached to either regular decision or rolling. Early action and early decision follow a similar timeline to one another. There is one specific deadline that the college establishes, which is usually somewhere between November 1st and December 1st. Some colleges offer a second round of early decision. You might hear it referred to as ED2, that usually occurs sometime in January. For both early action and early decision, students hear back sometime in December or January. The difference is that with early action, there is no binding commitment. A student is free to apply to and attend any other college that they wish. wish. With early decision, if a student is accepted, they must attend that college and withdraw other applications. Restrictive early action is offered by only a handful of colleges out there, and while there isn't a binding commitment made to that single college that the student's applying to, so that the student doesn't have to go if they're accepted, they may be limited in where else they can apply early. For example, they may not be able to apply restrictive early action to one school and then early decision to another school. So a few assorted to-do items, some of which have been touched on already. Otherwise, students may want to save graded papers that they've written or will write this year, since sometimes a college will accept a graded writing sample as part of the application. If they don't already have one, now is a good time for kids to set up an appropriate email address to be used for college and start checking it. That's how a lot of the college admission officers will communicate with them, so getting in the habit of doing that now is good. Most colleges say that they don't have the time or interest to scope out Facebook accounts or anything, but if they have concerns that come up in the rest of a student's application, it's something that they may do. Scholarship organizations may also take a look at students' profiles. In addition to the individual meetings that will occur over the next few months or so, later this year in May, we'll be meeting with all juniors in small groups during one of their lunch waves to review where they are in the process and provide further feedback. Then heading into next year, senior year, things get going pretty quickly. Within the first couple weeks of school, we present to all the students in their English classes and hold a program for parents, going over the nuts and bolts of the application process. We continue to meet with students and parents in some cases individually as they finalize their list of options, make decisions about when to apply, which tests to take or retake, etc., and review their applications and essays. Students attend presentations in the College and Career Center by colleges that they're interested in. Each year we have over 200 colleges that come to visit Staples, which is great. And we offer an evening program dedicated to financial aid each October, which is very in-depth and informative.
Hi, I'm Deb Slocum, another one of the counselors here at the Guidance Department. I'm hoping that most of the people here are familiar with the emails that have gone on from the Resilience Project, which is centered in the Staples Guidance Department. The Resilience Project focuses on helping students to develop the skills and confidence to overcome the normal bumps and scrapes in life. So our philosophy, no surprise, our philosophy with regard to resilience extends to the college planning and admissions process. So, in that light, I would like each of you to take a deep breath in, hold it for 5 seconds, and breathe out. I'm having you practice this exercise because you're going to need to do it a lot over the next year and a half. So much has changed since we were in high school, and one of the biggest changes is the pressure that's attached to college admissions. It's big business. While lots of people are making lots of money, people with access to the magazine articles and blogs and marketing cannot help but start to feel the resulting pressure. In Westport, college admissions can feel like a race for both the parents and the kids, and sometimes it's hard not to feel like the gun went off and you missed it and everybody else is ahead of you. We understand that despite our reassurances, it's very challenging for you to trust on a day-to-day level that everything will turn out all right. After all, you're surrounded by neighbors, co-workers, and even the mailman, all of whom are college experts and are more than willing to offer you their personal advice, which usually ends up making you feel more anxious than it did before they started talking to you. So intellectually, you may understand that there's 3,000 colleges in this country, and that each child will have a different list based on his or her personality and learning style, but you and your child are continually inundated with the belief, all factual evidence to the contrary, that your child must attend a name brand college to achieve any success in life. In fact, the myth goes further. If your child is fortunate enough to be accepted to one of the highly ranked colleges in U.S. News and World Report, don't get me started, he or she is guaranteed to have a successful life. Did you know that? Because the right college leads to the right job, the right partner, lots of money, and total happiness. Implicit in all of this is the illusion that if you plan appropriately and get your child to do all the right things, your child will be admitted to that good college. Alternatively, if you don't plan it all perfectly, you are compromising your child's future. So while you may pride yourself on encouraging resilience and you do your best to embrace those inevitable mistakes the kids are making, after being inundated with all this college process may feel too important for you to leave it up to chance and your 16 or 17-year-old. So I'm acknowledging the pressure that's on you, because you're the ones that's being fed the illusion that if we put in enough effort as parents and gain enough knowledge and control over our children's decisions, we can guarantee them happiness. Do you see the formula? You control every decision, they get all the right grades, they get into the right college, they're happy forever. Yet the reality is that applying to college is just another developmental milestone. In fact, it's the one you have the least control over. You can monitor your children's homework. How well does that work now? Arrange test prep, hire the essay tutors, but no parent in this auditorium can ensure that a given college will admit their child, or for that matter, make their child achieve certain grades or standardized test scores. So just as all our children learn to walk and talk eventually, I can promise you that all of these juniors will move on to life after high school, but they won't all do it in the same way. Some will need a year off, some will start at a local college, some will venture far away, only to come back a year later, and so on and so on. So finding in a college, and then getting in only guarantees that our children have a place to start the next leg of their journey. No matter where they go and what they do, there'll be disappointments and failures, as well as joy and excitement. So behind all of this anxiety is the knowledge that the time is ticking down. We have about a year and a half left. And if we can focus on the facts of college admissions, we don't have to think about the fact that they're moving away from us. So here's some tips to help you keep perspective. Number one, find one non-judgmental, empathetic friend in whom you can confide your worries. You're going to be anxious. It's going to be inevitable. And you need a place to dump your worries because your kids are watching you so carefully to see what your reaction is to everything, from their SAT scores to the latest test grade they got. Number two, limit the number of conversations you have with and without your child about college admissions. I know I do this for a living, but I am just blown away by how fascinating everybody finds this. They could talk about this 24/7. But the students are bombarded at school, and hearing it at home all over again is not only exhausting, but dispiriting. So you know when they start to get that look on their face? That means they're done, and they don't want to talk about it anymore. And the last thing on earth you want to do is spend every minute of the next year and a half talking about college. Number three, please, you know your children. Be realistic. Work with us. And save and protect your child from the feeling that they're not good enough, and eventually from a pile of rejection notices. Number four, no, there is not one perfect college out there for your child. Here's what the kids think. They're going to walk on a campus, the sun is going to come out, there'll be a rainbow, and they'll turn to you and say, "This is it." This is the illusion that's presented to them. It's not true. There's any number of colleges where your child will be successful. You do have to be organized, number four, because most of them aren't. And organization does reduce stress, so helping them to stay organized is a great role for you. Number five, maintain your integrity. Send your child the message that he or she should be authentic throughout the whole process and that compromising one's values is unnecessary and unacceptable. Number six, this is a long list. Don't believe everything you hear. Some of the rumors that the kids bring to me, what? So please check out anything you hear and you're not sure about with your child's counselor. And number seven, finally, and most importantly, reassure them whenever you can that whatever their choice is, it doesn't change who they are. They're the same people with talents, strengths, and dreams. The admissions process determines where they may study, but not who they are at 17 or who they will eventually become. Thank you. Enjoy the cartoon.
All right, I hope we're all laughing at that cartoon. That's what it's meant for. But I'd like to just now introduce one of our students, Amanda, who was out there distributing materials, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about the college process for her.
Hi, I'm Amanda Mezoff, and I am a senior, and I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about my personal experience so you could hear from a student. So I started the college process in February of junior year, and I really didn't know that much to start out, other than the fact that I was interested in a school in the Northeast that wasn't too rural and had a nice-looking campus. It's important. And I didn't really do that much research beforehand either, because as I came to learn, the most important thing that I found when I visited was just the general feel I got in the atmosphere that I found at each school. And, you know, doing things like having lunch in the cafeteria and seeing what kind of students were there and maybe overhearing a conversation or two. Really helped me to get a sense of what each school was really like. And I found it really interesting. You really can't judge a school based on statistics. I found schools with, 45,000 students that I liked, and I found schools with 1,500 students that I liked. It really just depends on the culture and the vibe you get from each individual school and the kind of people you meet there. And then I took notes while I was visiting each of the schools and sort of jotted down my first impressions so that I'd remember my experiences for later when I was considering which schools I was applying to and eventually why I was interested in each of these schools. And one thing I found really useful to keep in mind was not to be influenced by sort of arbitrary circumstances of each school I visited, like if the weather was bad. I visited one school it was probably like 15 degrees and it was freezing, and so we were all miserable the entire tour. But once I stepped back from that and thought about it, I realized I really liked the school. So things like that are important to keep in mind. So then after February, I thought about the schools I'd visited a bit and visited more in April and during the summer. In total, I visited about 15 schools, and I didn't do any interviews before I began my applications because I decided it would be best to sit down and sort of figure out a plan before I made any initial steps. During the summer, I started my Common App essay, but nothing else, because I figured the most important essay I would write was the Common App essay, because every school would be getting it. So I spent some time focusing on that, centering down my topic, writing my thoughts down, and then didn't actually end up editing it until the school year started. And when that happened, I made the decision to take 2 free periods first semester, which was a really, really good decision because I actually managed to write most of my essays in school, which saved a lot of time, staying up late and writing essays, and it took off a lot of the stress. So I really enjoyed that. And for me personally, at least, every school I filled out an application for had a supplement, and those ranged from 1 to 8 essays. So I had a lot of work to do, and taking so much time out of my schedule, or taking enough time out of my school schedule to get that done was really, really helpful and definitely helped me to manage anxiety. And then something important to consider, I think, also is that the outside of the Common App essay, things like the activities sheet or any music supplements will take extra time. So that ended up being stuff I did mostly at home, but it did take a bunch of extra effort. And then I edited my essays at home with my parents, and then later with my guidance counselor before I submitted. And something I know a lot of people worry about is just the idea of college stress and tackling senior year, because many people say it's your hardest year of high school. But for me, the most important thing was just to get all the work done. I knew I had a lot of essays to write, but that once I submitted, all of it was out of my hands and there was nothing I could do. I'd done everything I could. So my goal was just to write the essays, and then once I did that, I could, not worry because everything was submitted and I just had to wait, which was really nice. And Although I did apply early decision to a school, I did work on my essays for other schools just to make sure I didn't have to cram right before the new year, which I'm sure would not have been fun. But fortunately, I was accepted, and so now I'm done with the college process.
I want to thank Amanda again for being here, and you heard one student's journey, so thank you, Amanda. That was really great, really, it was real, and that was important for everybody to hear. So what we're going to do now, and I think this is probably the favorite part, is you're going to be moving into individual rooms with your counselor. For anyone who has, and we could put up the next slide, which I think will have the rooms, which I think would be great. So, anyway, for those of you that have Mr. Heidick as a counselor, he will be in the room within about 5 minutes. He's actually coaching a basketball game right now, which is why he hasn't been here. So let's hope he won, so that it'll be a lot of fun when you're in the room with him. But any questions that you had, certainly feel free. It's our favorite part of this presentation. We'll also have actually an article for you to read, and we'll have an evaluation sheet for you to do at the end, but we'll do that with you in the room. And on your way out, feel free to have some either decaffeinated coffee or some water, and we'll be excited to see you up in our rooms. All right, see you soon.